Well, yesterday, the Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, announced that Cabinet has now formally endorsed the new white paper that will deal with citizenship, immigration and refugees. This will replace the three bills, or the three laws that we currently have. But already, there are calls for him to withdraw it. Lawyers for Human Rights say the white paper will not deal with the problems we have with the movement of people. Motsoaledi says our entire framework of laws needs to change. Well, Nabeelah Mia is the head of the Penal Reform Programme and Migration Detention at Lawyers for Human Rights. Nabeelah, good afternoon to you, and thank you very much indeed for your time. Why do you believe the proposals in this white paper are not going to work?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Thank you very much for having me. Well, Lawyers for Human Rights, along with a number of organizations, including international human rights bodies, made submissions on this paper outlining why we do not think the proposals are going to work, most importantly being the proposals to withdraw from United Nations conventions and protocols, specifically the Refugees Convention, because a lot of what we have signed on to in the conventions is domesticated in our law, in our constitutional court jurisprudence. It's embedded in our law already. It's embedded in how we afford rights to refugees and asylum seekers. And I think that it also sends a very mixed message to South Africans about the message that that South Africa actually affords international human rights. And on one hand, we see us being proponents and waving the beacon of human rights in the context of Gaza, very rightly so. But here we are basically trying to withdraw from the 1951 Refugees Convention, which makes, in a way, a mockery of how we place ourselves in the international human rights system. So, and go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, but from what you say then, even if we withdrew from these conventions, because of the previous rulings in the courts, we would still pretty much have to stick to all of the measures in those conventions.
Yes, very much so. When a bill, currently the white paper is policy, and the minister speaks about overhauling the legislation. So what is proposed in the white paper must be put into a bill, and that bill must pass constitutional muster. Now, if you have jurisprudence that exists that set a certain constitutional standards, any bill that goes contrary to that will be unconstitutional.
Do you believe then that the bill, the proposals from the minister in the white paper as it is published at the moment would be unconstitutional? It would not be constitutional to do what the minister wants to do. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely, that is exactly what we're saying. And that is the stance we take. We also think that, we must look at it for what it is. We are 6 weeks away from elections. What the white paper proposes is actually a duplication of ANC policy, and we as South Africans mustn't be sleeping on the fact that this white paper and its release and finalization, which is somewhat unprecedented if you look at it, a policy being finalized so quickly from when submissions were received at the end of January to now in April, 6 weeks short of election. We must look at it for what it is. It is politicking, and it's being touted to us as South Africans as legislative change done by our cabinet, but it's actually a repetition of a political party's political stance ahead of elections.
So, the minister could easily say he's responding to a desire from voters to change the current situation. And I don't need to remind you of the voices that we hear in our society around this. And isn't that what a democratically elected politician should do, reflect the wills of the electorate?
Most certainly, but can we say that it's a true reflection of what is happening on the ground? Can we say that service delivery in South Africa is failing because of the rights afforded to asylum seekers and refugees? We don't think so. Service delivery and the issues, the economic crisis that we find ourselves in are not at the door of refugees and asylum seekers, most definitely not. They are as a result of ineffective governance that has overtaken us.
There's going to be all sorts of things that will happen from here. We're likely to see all sorts of different views being expressed. Are you worried about a rise in xenophobia during these elections? Do you think that's what's going to happen?
Most definitely. I think that, like I said, we don't, the grounds that is used where migrants are scapegoated in elections for poor service deliveries is something that is not unique to South Africa. It's something that is done globally around elections across the world. So we are just concerned at the way it will be used publicly and what will then be affected on the ground, where it might give rise to xenophobic attacks, even more so than what is currently happening. We already know that on the ground, refugees and asylum seekers face, unprecedented xenophobia, that is of great harm to them.
So within all of this then, we're in Southern Africa, there's a huge movement of people, as there is in every region around the world, and as there always has been. How should government manage that migration of people? You can't stop people from moving, and we know that we can't stop people coming into and out of our country. What would you suggest then to manage that?
So I think that what has been useful in the submissions useful in this process has been that it has elicited a number of submissions to the government by international human rights bodies, including the UNHCR, who are set out. If you go and read the UNHCR submissions on the white paper, you will see that they have set out policies for the Department of Home Affairs to deal with certain crises and inefficiencies that are happening. The minister has effectively crowdsourced how to fix his failing department, and why are those not being used? You have the expert body on refugees and asylum seekers giving it to you on paper. Why not implement that? Why not to take those suggestions and actually see whether those will work effectively, because you have the data there.
Nabeelah Mia, thank you, Head of the Penal Reform Program and Migration Detention at Lawyers for Human Rights. Do appreciate the time.